Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're back with another game preview here. Big ACC matchup on the road for North Carolina at Virginia. Virginia, of course, playing as well as anybody, over the last 4 weeks or so, following their loss to open conference play against Virginia Tech. They've rattled off like 5 in a row, I think. North Carolina has struggled a little bit. Their defense has really taken a hit compared to what we anticipated coming into the year. And now, from where they even were, a month ago, they've been giving up high number of points, high number of open catch and shoots. They have been a little bit unlucky at times, I would say. I know we've talked about this a little bit, with some of the shots guys have hit. But they had a tough West Coast swing, bounced back at home earlier this week against Notre Dame, who's really hurting without Marcus Burton, but beat them by 22. Now headed on the road against Virginia, and what won't be an easy matchup. Virginia kind of really surprising a lot of people. I wouldn't really say surprising us. We anticipated them being a very good team, but sitting at 16-2. But I guess, Cody, we'll start on the Virginia side here. What does Virginia need to do to hold off a UNC upset on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think this should be a great game. I think regardless of what the Ken Palm projection is, I think they have it at 9? It's 8 or 9 right now. I anticipate it being a much better game than that. I think if you're talking about where these teams are on the market, I think Virginia's probably pretty close to their peak at this point in time. They're playing really well. They're proving that they belong among the elites in the ACC, but I think we're getting to the point where they might be at the top of their market. But for their offense, I mean, we touched on the UNC defense a little bit. They've been unlucky, but they also haven't been good. They've had to resort to, completely changing their scheme. They've got out of the strict drop coverage. They've actually played a little bit of zone. Tried high hedging ball screens at a higher clip, and none of it really worked, especially in the West Coast trip. So I think the main thing for Virginia is just expose a UNC defense that kind of looks like they're in disarray at this point in time. They're obviously much more capable than Notre Dame was on Tuesday night or Wednesday night to, really attack these guys off the dribble. I think that's kind of the main key is force UNC to help when they don't want to. They typically have more of a guard your yard mentality. They've obviously been switching some things up lately. They've had some lineup changes as well. We've seen more Derek Dixon, less Kyan Evans, which I think is better for the UNC defense long term. Bogovat's has still been playing similar volume. We've seen some more Jonathan Powell, but ultimately they don't have elite wing defenders, and I think Virginia has elite or borderline elite. They do it more by committee, but guys like Malik Thomas, Sam Lewis, a little bit of Devin Tillis can shoot and create for others as well. So they're very interchangeable and they're very hard to guard. So I do think it's a fairly good matchup for their offense. Virginia's pick and roll offense isn't phenomenal. They're more attacking kick base, which UNC's defense is normally designed to take away the kick action, but they will allow some rim attacks. And I think guys like Tyster Ritter and, when Grunlow's at the rim and Onyenso can have success there. I think particularly, DeRitter has a tough matchup with Caleb Wilson, obviously. So I think it's going to be more up to the wings, exposing some matchups where, it looks to be pretty advantageous. So overall, I think the offensive matchup seems to be pretty good. On the defensive end, it's, a little bit different. It's not a terrible matchup really on this side either. I think outside of trying to contain Caleb Wilson, because DeRitter is bigger in stature, but I'm not sure he has the lateral movement to be able to contain Wilson for all 40 minutes. They don't really seem to have a phenomenal candidate to shut him down. And, but that is the main key. I think the less advantages Wilson is creating, the better. And, when Wilson has the ball mid to high posts, UVA will send a second guy a lot of the time. You would think with a drop coverage based defense that you're just kind of going to let those guys play one-on-one. You're trying to limit rotations, but they'll actually send a second guy at Wilson. And I think you need to, kind of mix up where that second guy is coming from. If he's coming from the same area every time, I think Wilson is smart enough to make the right decision, make the right pass. if you can confuse him a bit, send him like send a different guy from a different area that he hasn't seen all that much, and I think you can confuse him a little bit, force some turnovers, and I think you can contain him that way. And then just limiting transition, and I think limiting catch and shoot chances against a UNC team that actually isn't all that comfortable making shots off the dribble. They're I believe they're 19th percentile dribble jumper efficiency offense. So they're really looking to play rim and three. Virginia's looking to take away rim and three. So I think that's kind of why it's a decent matchup for their defense as well. They're gonna have to limit the offensive glass as well. That's kind of the one area for Virginia that hasn't been all that great this season. They're 159th in defensive rebound rate, and UNC can get on the glass a bit with Wilson and Vasar, and a little bit with Stevenson. I guess one more area to look out for defensively is the pick and pop ability of Henry Vasar. I think that's something that can really open up some stuff for Carolina. So, not hoping that he doesn't get hot early, but I think not just letting him get a few catch and shoots early in the game to like really space out your defense, I think is going to be key, because these Virginia perimeter defenders aren't known as being like plus. I actually think they're underrated, but I do think if Vasar hits a few threes and Carolina can get downhill consistently and open up rim attempts, I think that's where it could get a bit dicey.
Yeah, I'll start there because that's where I kind of had my main point on the offensive end for Carolina outside of the glass, which I'll talk about as well. But, with Virginia's drop coverage, I think it's with as high a clip as Vasar shot at this year, 48% from behind the arc. Of course, lately he has struggled a little bit more. I think he had a 1 for 6 to end the West Coast swing, 1 of 3 the other night against Notre Dame. But, he's going to get looks in this game that, he's going to be very comfortable against this drop coverage. So, if they're looking for that, if he can knock a few down, like you said, that's going to be a massive key for this Carolina offense, because then I think it leads to maybe some overreaction on because they're still going to play the drop coverage, but maybe some overreaction to helping on the pop. And then maybe you get some burn cuts that are replacing, the big man who's popping. I think there are some avenues if he can, knock some shots down early. I think that's what they're kind of going to have to play through that in transition, at least to start the game until they're able to figure out what else maybe they're able to open up. You make a good point about Wilson. I don't really know as if Virginia has a true good matchup for him. He's obviously a phenomenal athlete, super good moving laterally. And then on the offensive glass, I think he has a lot of upside in this matchup. A Virginia team that, for as well as they protect the rim, they don't defensive rebound all that well, 159th in defensive rebound rate. And this Carolina team is, not elite on the offensive glass by any stretch, but they're in the top 75 in the country in offensive rebound rate. They've got a few guys here, Wilson, Vasar, who can both get on the offensive glass, I think, in this matchup at a pretty high clip, especially with Wilson's athleticism. So I would look out for that as a way for them to potentially generate some second chances and maybe some open catch and shoot opportunities on kickouts, things of that nature. So I think that's kind of how things look on the offensive end. On the defensive end, you mentioned more Derek Dixon of late. It's going to be really important for these Carolina guards, I think, to try and just mix. I think the biggest thing is mixing up what they've been doing. Just trying to mix up looks, mix up coverages, because they haven't been overly effective at really doing anything. So I think trying to be more unpredictable, I guess, is a way they can try and mask some of it. But this isn't a Virginia team that you really are super thrilled to play zone against. They shoot the ball from 3 at a high clip, 37%. Like you mentioned, they have plenty of playmakers, that can get downhill and give some of these Carolina on-ball defenders trouble, which is really just a big concern for this Carolina season in general. But, in this matchup, Carolina is really just going to have to try and control the ball as best they can, try and cut off clean rim attempts as best they can. And that way they don't have to overreact and lead to wide open catch and shoot threes for, guys like DeRidder or Malik Thomas who shoot the three at a high clip. And then finally, I think it's limiting offensive glass, limiting second chances here. Like, this Virginia offensive rebounding attack is, one of the top in the country. They're third in the country in offensive rebound rate. North Carolina does a good job on the defensive glass, 39th on the season. But, this Virginia team has been successful in most of their matchups on the offensive glass. So I think cutting some of that off is going to be really crucial, because if you're giving up second chance opportunities to Virginia, that spells trouble to kick out threes, for a team that shoots it really well. They shoot the three at a high clip, both percentage and rate wise. So that could spell trouble for Carolina, particularly with some of the shooting luck they've had of late. Those are probably going in at a 75% clip if you ask Carolina fans. So
it's pretty close.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly has been lately. It's been tough, but I think that spread feels a little bit too high. I'd be shocked if it opened up there. But game picks here, Cody. Who are you going with to take home the victory here?
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be a lot closer than that projection indicates. And like we both said, I think, if Henry Vasar spaces the floor early and puts this Virginia defense in a bind, I do think Carolina can win this game on the road. But I do think UNC is going through a little bit too much defensively right now, even though I think it's getting overblown. Like, that 4-game sample size that ended with the West Coast trip, not the Notre Dame game. Their teams were shooting 50% from three over a 4-game sample. I think teams made 58 threes in 4 games. It's just a stupid number, but ultimately, I think Virginia is just the more well-rounded team on both ends right now, but UNC can give them a scare. I think they win a very tight game, 79-77.
Yeah, I like I said, I think it's going to be closer than at least what Ken Palm, Torvik project. I think it's a tough one for UNC the way they're playing right now. They can make it a game here, but I just trust Virginia a little bit more at the moment. I'm going to take Virginia 83-78 at home here. Before we wrap things up, Cody, anything else to add?
Nothing for me. I mean, it's one of the games that I'm really circling to watch this weekend. I need to see a little bit more of the UNC defense and if it's making any improvements or not. And I always just love watching Virginia regardless. They've been phenomenal all year, a team that we've really liked. So definitely excited for this one.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll see if UNC can get right here with a big conference victory. But that wraps things up for us here. Thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.